To discuss the Ejura committee reports. Now, on the 1st of July, the Interior Minister, Honorable Ambrose Derry, put together a 3-member committee to probe the Ejura violence, and it included the chairman of the committee, who is the Justice of the Court of Appeal, Justice George Kingsley Kumsin. We also had security analyst Dr. Vladimir Entry Danso, and Executive Director of Pen Plus Bites, Juliet Amwa. And they were supposed to have sat for 10 days, but 4 days into the probe, they requested for some extra days because they said there was a lot more work to be done. And so on the 16th of July, they had their final sitting, after which they presented the results or the recommendations that they had made on the 27th of July to the Interior Minister. It's been exactly 2 months and a day since this report was given to the Interior Minister and to government. And finally, we've been given the chance to also peruse the document and also, of course, understand what exactly is happening. So some recommendations were made, some findings were also made as well. But interestingly, the family or families of the deceased, the 2 deceased and the people who were injured, they said they would wait to see exactly how much is given to them before they even comment on the issue. Some of them are hoping that prosecutions will be made towards the security officers who opened fire on the community members and a host of other things. Let's take a look at Ibrahim Abubakar's report quickly, and we'll be speaking to our guest afterwards.
The 3-member ministerial committee tasked to probe the disturbances and unravel the circumstances that led to the shooting and killing of 2 persons at Ejura on June 29 has recommended adequate compensation for the families of the deceased and also 4 others who sustained gunshot injuries. For families of the 2 deceased persons, they are not only looking at the compensation package, but want to see the officers involved in the shooting and killing of their relatives be prosecuted. Other family members also say they are not ready to comment on the matter until they see what is entailed in the compensation package. We will be monitoring developments and update you in our subsequent bulletins. Ibrahim Abubakar, TV3 News.
And interesting that they are asking for the prosecution of the security officers. That was missing in the recommendations that the committee put out. In fact, recommendation number 2, it said that the committee recommends the immediate transfer of the District Police Commander of Ejura, DSP Philip Kudu-Hammond, first for his incompetence in handling the situation and for the fact that his relationship with the community seems to have been damaged beyond repair. And they also asked or recommended the removal of the Ejura Secretary Municipal Chief Executive, Honorable Mohammed Salisu Bamba, who, by the way, proceeded to even tender in his resignation during the probe anyway. So it looks as if he saw that coming. But there were other findings that they made. The fact that they said the police and the security apparatus acted, on very poor intelligence. They were not adequately equipped. They were not prepared for the situation. In fact, the regional minister, who is the chairman of the Regional Security Council, also acted on impulse, and it was a knee-jerk reaction when he called for the military to step in and support in handling the riots. Mr. Richard Kumado, he is a fraud expert and a security analyst. He joins us in the studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
I've heard some security experts who heavily criticized the committee when it was instituted come out and say that they're actually satisfied with the recommendations and the reports by the committee. I don't know what you think. I'd want to first pick your thoughts on that.
Which
and what your thoughts are on the reports that has been put out.
Oh, okay. So we are aware of the report. The report has been given to government. Thankfully, government released the report. What is not clear is whether government has accepted the report wholeheartedly or we are waiting to receive the white paper as usual. But what I would have said is that if government has accepted the report as it is, then we will be grateful or we will be glad to see government apply themselves to the recommendations that has been made so far.
Did the committee do a good job with the report?
Whether they've done a good job or they did not, we have some recommendations on our hand. And as governments, as usual, we want to issue white paper to disagree with some portions of it. So far, it looks to me we haven't seen that from government, particularly with this one.
Yeah.
And even though people must have their own issues, I would have been glad if we could proceed and apply ourselves to the recommendation. Remember, there's a 14-year-old boy whose legs has been amputated.
Yeah.
And the language the committee members use is that they need to be compensated. And they did not state
how much.
Exactly.
Should
and
they
what
have stated
level
that
of,
in the report?
And what level of compensation are we talking about? Are we taking care of this boy to his PhD level? Are we giving him a house? Are we giving him some amount of money at the end of the month? Or what are we supposed to do?
Is that not at the discretion of government?
Yeah, but when you are making a recommendation, particularly when we have our dad who is a judge, in that particular case, it's assumed that the boy is sitting before him and he want to make a case for the boy.
Okay.
And in that position, you shouldn't leave it to the discretion of some other persons who might not have the same feeling or the knowledge you have for writing those things. So language was a problem. Then again, they said the soldiers should be sanctioned.
Even before you go to the soldiers, I mean, if you were on that committee, for the people who lost family members, for the people whose family members were maimed, what kind of remuneration, if I should say, would you recommend?
I would have gone for the small boy, especially when it had been confirmed that he was not near what was happening. He was just going to buy medicine from the drugstore. And that particular issue happened to him. I would have said government should give him a house. Every month, government should give him 10,000 Ghana cedis. Government should sponsor his education to the PhD level.
Every month, 10,000 for the rest of his life?
Exactly. And it should be reviewed as his, as economic conditions in this country, so that he should not be disadvantaged. We don't know who that boy is going to be. And we are definitely taking away his future. As you know how we treat disabled people in this country, an issue of inequality in salaries and wages or something. And if human beings are economic value properties to their family, then the family could say, my boy could have become, a medical doctor, a scientist, or whatever, a media personnel or a professional.
But what about those who will not see their family members ever again because they died?
And I'm even talking about a boy. When I say 10,000,
so what about those?
10,000, it's like, it's huge. But for those who have been dead for carelessly shooting a gun, and when the situation did not arise. You see, what we don't do in this country is that anytime law enforcement officers kill somebody, we don't probe, we don't investigate to find out what really happened. And this whole storyline about the people are shooting at them, and they must also return fire, and in the cause, they end up killing the people. Well, I think we need to be probing those
The committee said that the fact that you're saying they were pelting stones at the police was not enough to warrant the military to open fire on them, and so for them, that in itself,
it's a non-starter.
Exactly. Yeah. But what they did not recommend is prosecution, which is what the family members were asking, that we're waiting for prosecution of the security officers who opened fire on us. The committee says that we would rather want you to transfer the district commander instead.
I usually don't criticize people when they have finished doing their work, but I would have said that because of the inconsistencies and because of the discrepancies from family members to whatever it is, I recommend that family members have another opportunity. They can seek independent legal redress to address some of these issues and where they think their rights have been abused or compensations have not been adequately made available to them because they've lost a loved one, and they can't seek some legal address. Then again, we are losing the opportunity where we have a judge sitting on the committee and would have thought that our daddy would have just said the way it is in straightforward language, that we've done A, B, C, D, and do not just say compensate them or sanction them. I think those two languages will create some level of ambiguity, and at the discretion of people, they could mess it up.
Do you think that the deputy regional commander as well should have been sanctioned? Because in this case, it's only the district police commander who was asked to be transferred, but the deputy regional commander, I mean, he was cited also in the findings as, part of the problem that existed or, came up at Ejura during the riots. And so should he also have been sanctioned?
Definitely. All those who were involved in this particular operation, sometimes security operations failure might not be intelligence failure. That is what we also need to put out there. That anytime you see security operations fail, it does not necessarily mean that they do not have the intelligence or it's an intelligence failure. And for some of us who work within the intelligence community, we know exactly some of these things. I think their relationship with the community over the years have been something. So they took the Kaka threat as one of those ones until it got out of hand. But Bella, do you blame them? This is a regional minister who sent military officers above their head. And the politician acting with some level of ignorance and do not really understand what was happening. And if you saw finding number 23, it's rightly there. And I think going forward, considering what we are hearing again from Takrady, the relationship between the politician and the police fighting over something to be able to clear the air, I think we need to look at that position of resec and dissect and who has it and what really their responsibilities are if the objective is to guarantee safety and security assurances to the general public.
Okay, well, I'll just read a bit of that before I introduce my next guest who's joining us via Zoom. But point 21 of the findings indicates that the committee further finds that there was no proper security briefing and intelligence gathering and sharing. From the evidence of the regional minister, who is the chair of REGSEC, it is obvious that the intelligence information he received caused him to authorize the deployment of the military. He claimed to have received information from some sources in Ejura. He deemed this information to be so vital and urgent that he ordered the deployment of the military immediately. He tendered in a video dubbed Exhibit A. When pressed to disclose the person who gave him the video of the attack of the riot, the chairman of REGSEC declined. We note that if there was a proper sharing of intelligence information amongst members of REGSEC and their respective organizations, this knee-jerk approach would not have been adopted in the handling of the situation on the ground. And we note that this escalated the situation and thereby provided grounds for the deployment of the military. I'll end with this one on point 22. The committee finds that the situation became fluid and got out of hand because the police, 1, did not work on the intelligence sharing, 2, failed to prepare for the situation on the ground, and 3, over-relied on the military personnel and thereby failed to organize adequately in terms of personnel and equipment. Joining me via Zoom is Mutaru Mumuni Mukhtar. He's the Executive Director of West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I hope you're well.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you and good morning to your viewers.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm doing well.
Pardon?
Yes, all is well.
Okay. All right. I want to pick your thoughts on the report that has been released with regards to the Ejura riots and, of course, the work done by the committee. Are you satisfied with the findings and the recommendations?
Yes, it's pleasing. It's refreshing that we are getting the report now. It could have been earlier, but it's good that we are getting the report now. And the content, as you read out, we've been looking at it since last night in terms of content and in terms of the recommendations out of the content. And there are portions of it that, of course, generally predictable and areas that we may have to continue to interrogate, probably for refining, and also in terms of implementation of that report. Traditionally, you would see, government come out with its own statement on it, either through a white paper or some form of communication for us to indicate government's position, official position on the report. Sometimes it may not necessarily agree entirely with the content or recommendations, but we're yet to see that. But as we speak now, we're seeing, the findings accompanied by 10-point recommendations for implementation. And largely, if you've been following the incidents since the work of the commission began up to this point, some of this would not look new or strange to you. But what I observe is that many of the recommendations are very, very general and sometimes vague in terms of, implementation.
Which ones exactly?
If you look at the recommendations that, relates to the role of the military, the deployment of the military and their role in this exercise that went past. The committee established that the military's role was very poorly discharged. And that they recommend some action on that. And the recommendation is the military leadership should review the actions of their men on the ground and also appropriate sanctions. That is very, very vague. It's very too general. What is the recommendation in terms of sanctions? Spending a day in the guard room or maybe a day or a week reduction in terms of salary could be sanctions. Is that enough in terms of deterrence for men in uniform who continue to engage in these forms of impunity against citizens? Those recommendations are very general. And it is similar for many of the other recommendations, except recommendation number 9, that talks about the use of, technology, body cameras in terms of operations. That is very specific, and it is something we've been speaking about for several years.
Exactly.
Best practices. We need to have that as an inherent part of the operations of our security men, so that when it comes to evidence gathering, it helps the police and it helps the public. You see in the work in terms of witness accounts of what happened. There are some of these that have been discredited by the committee. I don't know whether it was in their place to discredit the accounts of the widow of Kaka or the other witnesses who tendered in evidence in terms of videos that were significantly or entirely discounted or dismissed. Those, there are issues that we would continue to engage in terms of dealing with things like this. So generally, those are my observations of this report.
Okay. Now, are you referring exactly to the part where the committee said that, the probable cause of Kaka's death was a family feud and not necessarily because of his activism?
That, I think, was not in the place of the committee to have done that. I think they were meant to, relay the accounts of witnesses and their findings to the public and lead the public to make that judgment. And I think this short period of work would not be enough to determine through forensic evidence and proper investigations in terms of who must have been responsible for the death of Kaka.
Okay. I get what you mean. Richard, do you also agree?
Because,
I thought we had lost you there.
that kind of investigation we are able to establish.
Carry on.
So I don't think that that recommendation, that conclusion, is appropriate.
Well, they did say that it was based on the neighbor's accounts and the fact that the wife of the late Kaka had given a different account, but then to an extent she corroborated the fact that the neighbor actually knocked on her door at a point, during the night when she saw Kaka's body being dragged to the bathroom, which is why they concluded that then it wasn't really as a result of activism because his brother was the one who had dragged him in?
If you look at the nature of homicide investigations or investigations relating to incidents or stuff like this, you need much more than this. You need watertight evidence. And so you would see witness accounts, some of them contradict other accounts. Which witness account are you going to believe? Of course, if you dismiss the account of the widow, who indeed have a very direct relationship with the deceased. If you discount that and admit other person's accounts, on what basis? We need to have enough, more than, watertight evidence to say that, yes, this account is believable and that is absolute, we believe in it as against the other witness. And if actually you believe that this was the case, then it means that we would have to go beyond this, ensure prosecutorial measures, resulting from the evidence you put in here. And so I think we will have to look at it more closely. I think the lawyers in there would have some time to look at it in the days, from now.
Definitely. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
All right.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to make the point about the role of the military. I think the committee's work would have been much more enriched if they had included. Look, we've been talking about the role of military in civilian functions or policing functions. I expected that they would have made at least a line or two about the fact that at what point should we have military involved in policing or civilian functions like this? Otherwise, you leave the room for state impunity in the way we employ the military. And I think it's a big concern that all of us would have been, happy to see that in the report.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. That's Muntari Mumuni Mukhtar. He's the Executive Director for West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. He has a meeting, so we had to end that. But coming back to you, he raised a number of points, and I noticed you were nodding throughout. The fact that the committee also concluded that the probable cause of death was a family feud and not his activism. Did you also have a problem with that?
But what was their justification for... what was their justification for disputing one and accepting one? Was that the cause of the investigation?
Well, they said that the neighbor gave her account.
No, sis, Gakal is dead. Police operation, Gakal is dead. There has been issue, and the standard protocol that set up the committee is to investigate what happened at Ejura and subsequently how we can come up with recommendations to prevent future occurrences.
Yeah.
So what was their point about this whole thing about he didn't die because of activism and he died? Didn't they know that in every conflict there are root causes and immediate causes?
Okay.
To the extent that the police has been made aware of some other people threatening Kaka, and to that extent they are saying that the police did not act and they are impugning incompetence on the level of the police for not acting to protect Kaka's life as a result of his social media activism and all that. Then at one other point, they are saying that don't believe what the wife is saying, but believe some other people. I think whether we believe this or we believe that, Kaka is dead. It's not going to come back again. So we better hurry up and work so hard to prevent some other occurrences. There's a 40-year-old boy whose leg has been amputated.
Yeah,
and it could happen to anybody's son, and some other people died. And we are a country where we are interested in killing people, and we never really protect our own. We don't know what these people are going to become tomorrow. And we should be seen as people who are working hard to protect lives and property.
Definitely. And so do you think that this affects his brother's case, Kaka's brother's case in any way? Because he's still in police custody.
Exactly.
As we speak.
Exactly. I think so. You remember Greg Afoko?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a case we have to be interested in. And I'm thinking this case wants to travel on the same pattern. And we need to look at it again. And they must work hard to ensure that the right thing is done this time around.
Let's talk about the issue of the municipal chief executive and the recommendation that he be removed from office. And in fact, the committee made a statement, and that was the final finding that they made, point 28. We observed that the MCE failed in his duty to handle the municipality in relation to his handling and dissemination of general information and intelligence information. His approach to matters concerning the municipality as the political head of the assembly was poorly done. No wonder he had to take cover when his municipality was in turmoil, leaving a political vacuum, and the MUSEC, which is the municipal security, was bereft of any leadership and proper coordination and direction during the crisis. Did we learn anything from the Ejura riots in selecting or appointing or nominating our MCEs? Because I'm sure you came across that leaked document of recommendations by the vetting community. And as much as they touted the credentials of the individuals that they recommended, they also gave reasons why they recommend them. That this person has served the party for this long. He helped the party to attain, a second term in the 2020 elections and a number of, and that came under heavy criticism because people started asking questions. Is it about who has served the party more, or is it about who has the requisite skills and knowledge to be able to run the municipality? Now, clearly, if this MCE that was nominated and eventually voted into office could not even manage the security situation, did we learn anything from that in nominating the next set of MCEs? Sister C,
there are two issues involved. Last 4 years, we did a job on the MCC.
Yeah.
You should have taken cameras around and see the caliber of people they nominated to man the assembly. It's a bump. Some can't even read and write. I know managing assembly is not about academic institutions where your competence in English language or something, but it's a huge leadership responsibility that we are placing on the people. There are deliberate reasons why they remove them. Even the new ones now, they have to pay their way in order to be confirmed. And you saw the number of rejections we are seeing for some other reasons. But I'm just saying that if we think the local level, at the DC level, that is where development of our nation starts, then we have to be mindful the people we send there. To the extent that it remains the prerogative of the politician, they will definitely fill in the place with their political people who they think have helped the party. Then again, why are we accusing the MCE? What about the regional minister who said he has a source of intelligence and he would not even disclose to an appeal court judge? And his local intelligence is more prioritized over the police intelligence. Yeah. You can clearly see it. And I have said before you, and you know my passion and my personal convictions when it comes to politicians, money, the districts and the regions. And that is the case and the cause of many of these problems we are facing. I mean, that is in our constitution. And so unless we go for a referendum to change some of these things, it will be very difficult. They could have done something about it without a referendum. We have done so many things in governance. pertaining to best practices and where we want to increase productivity without necessarily going to referendum. When it suits us, they don't want to do something about it. When it doesn't suit them, then they refer to the document. But I'm saying that considering what is happening at Takrady again, where the regional minister is fighting the police and the police are fighting the region over statements here and there, we would need to look at that particular arena again and say that, hey, you are the head of government, but let's do it properly.
Should the regional commander have been asked to step aside, like the MCE?
All of them mess up that day.
Okay.
There was communication problem, and that led to lack of the right procedures when it comes to their collaborative nature. Police and military have collaborated on various occasions, but once a politician is sending the military above the head of the police, then the police stood back and say, well, you guys have been sent with a higher power. Go forward and get a job done. And that is where the major issue is. I think collaboration is very good.
It's important,
it makes available the requisite skills for the law enforcement agency, but it has to be done properly.
Finally, before I let you go, so this was something that our other guests touched on. Point number 9 of the recommendations, that all crowd riot cases and crisis control units be made to wear body cams, and all vehicles and mobile gadgets employed must also have cameras. Now, sometime in 2019, we're told that government took possession of some 250 body cameras to be used by its personnel. And this is out of the first batch of 3,000 pieces that were expected to be delivered by the close of the year, as part of efforts to enhance police transparency and accountability. Where are these body cams? It didn't have to take Ejura riots for us to bring up this conversation again, especially if we have some 250 of those already in town.
Well, I've said it before. I know it's only Christians who can lie and they will cover themselves with the blood of Jesus. But I don't know, some other people can also, I don't want to use the word lie, but many things have been said and they were not provided. Then again, are we saying that the militarization of our police, didn't you know the end result of some of these things? Are we saying that our police have become so aggressive that now we need to put cameras on them for we to reconcile their actions when they come to killing of people? We have all traveled before. In the UK, the police do not have a gun. In Norway, they have not killed anybody in the past 20 years. And we are just copying and copying and copying blindly. I think those who made those promises would need to act right and make sure our policemen have body cameras.
Definitely. And the Interior Minister had said sometime this year that there were some more body cams that would be, brought into the country, as well as that 5,000, vests to protect the security personnel. Let's see how that goes based on this recommendation. We're waiting to see what government will have to say about the committee reports. Will they issue a white paper to reject some of the recommendations and the findings? Let's see how it goes. Mr. Richard Kumado is a fraud expert and a security consultant, and he joined us this morning right here on TV3 NewDay. We have more coming up with Cookie and some entertainment as well. Keep watching.